let me bring in Craig Shirley. Craig, for conservatives, for Republicans, this is so depressing. We've been talking about this privately, you and me, for some time now. Mitt Romney is not a conservative. In fact, he's not a moderate. We don't exactly know what he is. And all of your concerns about him not being a true conservative are really playing out now. You've been predicting that this is where we're going to lead. And you look at this map that Chuck's showing, you look at the polls that are out today, you look at what happened a couple of days ago where he made a terrible mistake on the day after an ambassador was killed. This is a nightmare scenario for the conservative movement, isn't it?
Well, I don't know about the standpoint of the conservative movement. The movement will always go on. It's always going to be there. But we do know one thing is that that politics, there are three essential elements: people, time, and money. You can always raise more money, you can always hire more people, but you cannot manufacture more time. And what Romney is doing is he's burning daylight right now, not being on offense, not making the case against President Obama. John Sears, Ronald Reagan's old campaign manager, said politics is motion, and Romney is not in motion.
Well, Craig, you were critical of, even though you're a conservative, even though you have been very critical of Barack Obama's domestic and foreign policy, you brought up some great points talking to me on the phone about the mistake Mitt Romney made this week a couple of days ago.
Right.
And you brought up some historical parallels about just how bad this was tactically for Mitt Romney to attack President Obama.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, we're beyond ideology, just from the standpoint of politics, is that the American people have always rallied to the president in time of national crisis. After December 7th, the American people could deny FDR nothing. After the missile crisis, they could deny. JFK goes on to actually win seats in the Congress in the election of 1962. They rallied during the failure of Desert One in the summer of 1980. They rallied to Jimmy Carter.
We'll talk about that. Jimmy Carter went up 10 percentage points after Desert One.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. But this whole thing, too, brings to mind another historical analogy, and that's 1976, when Ford, in the second debate with Jimmy Carter, said that there was no Soviet domination of Poland and there never will be under a Ford administration, ignoring the fact, of course, that there were 5 Soviet divisions in Warsaw at the time. Now, both campaigns pollsters said that Ford was picking up 1 point a day on Carter at that point. There was a pause in the momentum because there were new doubts were raised about Gerald Ford, and he actually didn't move forward for 5 days until he finally apologized for making this misstatement, and then he started his momentum again. But he ends up losing 50-48, and had he not made that mistake, or if he had fixed his mistake more quickly, he very well may have won in 1976.
And Gene Robinson this morning, Mitt Romney, of course, backing off. He's not talking about the killing of the ambassador, not talking about, not blaming Barack Obama for apologizing anymore, certainly not this morning. It seems like he's to move on, but the question is whether the combination of that and a flat Republican National Convention has led us to this point where Barack Obama's now opened up 6-7 point leads in the most critical swing states.
Yeah, you know, I think what Romney has to worry about is that obviously he didn't get a convention bounce. President Obama did, and now with this really horrible, not just a mistake, but it was abominable what he did the other day. I mean, it was a bad thing, and he ratchets down a bit more, and in a race where there's so few undecideds, he has to worry about this race essentially being locked in place. He has to worry about having enough time and enough persuadable voters out there to regain the ground that he's lost over the last couple of weeks.
Craig Shirley, you talked about Mitt Romney burning daylight. What can he do at this point? Is it a speech? Is it just the debates? Is there enough time? How does it get someone like you or even Eugene Robinson, who may not be actually supporting Mitt Romney, to feel like there's a real race here?
Well, yeah, Mika, that's a great point. What he's got to do is pivot back to an issue that's his strong point, is that we know about the discord in the Middle East. We know what he said about it. What he's got to do is jump beyond that and say, look, this is why we need energy independence in this country, because we're relying on an unstable region. I have a plan for energy independence by 2020. The president doesn't. And meanwhile, we're sending billions of dollars over to the Middle East that could be going into our own economy right here. He's got to take that foreign policy problem and his own problem and convert it into take lemons and make lemonade out of it for himself and get back to issues that he's familiar on and that he can make a winning case on.
Hey, Chuck, it's Willie. Last week in Charlotte, I had a very senior aide to the Obama campaign say, I'd much rather be us than them when inside these polls. And if you look at the NBC polls now in these 3 states, obviously you know what he was talking about. How do they feel right now? Do they feel like they're opening this lead and they're starting to get more comfortable, or where are they? Where's their headspace?
Well, I think they think some of this is a bounce, and they want to see where it is in about 10 days. You know, does any of it, quote, settle back to where it was pre-convention? You know, that's so you never know with these bounces if they can solidify and if they can stay. I think what they're trying to do with the doubling down, for instance, on their advertising in Florida, is seeing if they can sustain it and at worst force Romney to spend a lot more time in Florida and resources. But I want to go to what Romney, it's my understanding the Romney campaign is contemplating sort of a big policy speech before the debates. But there is a real debate inside the campaign. What's the topic? Do they go big on foreign policy? Do they do that because they might get more attention for it because of the dust-up this week and an attempt to sort of fix that and go bigger there? Or do they do something on the economy closer to what Craig was talking about and put more meat on the bones, but all of it in an attempt to set up the debates, to try to take control of, you know, I hate this word and we all talk about it too much, the narrative, right? To try to help set an agenda rather than be a reactive campaign. This is a campaign that has been nothing but reacting to news. That they're chasing the news cycle, I think, too much, and you see it, and I think they know it, and they're trying to find a moment to sort of reset.
Gene, if you were David Plouffe or Jim Messina or the president, what are the 2 things you'd be worried about in the face of all this good news that they've had in the last couple days in terms of the politics?
Number one, I would worry about events, I think, that could send the race in a different direction. You can't do anything about that. I would also frankly worry that that Romney would find a voice on issues that he knows something about. I think if I were Jim Messina or David Plouffe, I would be hoping that Mitt Romney tries to give a big policy speech on foreign policy, frankly, because he does not sound credible or grounded or knowledgeable about foreign policy in the way that he can sound on the economy, given his experience, and it doesn't work. And I think, to my mind at least, I don't know, Mika, you've heard a lot of foreign policy discussions in your day around the dinner table, but my impression is he does not sound like a man who has thought deeply about these issues,
not at all.
Or at all.
I think Greg Shirley has it right. I think he needs to talk about energy independence. I think he needs to talk about making America energy independent, because when most swing voters turn on the TV set and they look at the chaos over there, they go, wait a second, they're doing that because of a crude video that was uplinked? Why are we even worrying about that?
He's got to find
And it goes back to oil. I think Craig has it nailed. Talk about energy independence. Yeah.
Joe, could I just make one point, too, from Romney's standpoint, picking up on what Mika said, is that foreign policy crises tend to dissipate. We all know what happened to Winston Churchill at the end of World War II, where he was quickly voted out of office. In 1942, 1 year after December 7th, the Republicans made huge gains in the Congress, and of course Carter did lose the 80 campaign, in part because of the hostage crisis, even though it helped him win the primaries over Ted Kennedy.
Yep, no doubt about it.
All right, Chuck Todd, thank you very much. We'll see you in the Daily Rundown after morning. Joe, Eugene,
thank you so much.
Your column in today's Washington Post. And Craig Shirley, thank you as well. Your book is Rendezvous with Destiny.
Craig actually just wrote a new book while we were doing this segment. Yes, 47.
Ronald Reagan and the Campaign That Changed America. Thank you, gentlemen.